legislation. Right? So now the Shaykh is going to also summarize for us also why it is necessary to believe in al-qadr, to believe in ash-shara', which is the legislation. And again, this is a very, very important passage to reflect upon. And so the Shaykh says, and it has some very good reasoning and explanation. The Shaykh says, وَلَا بُدَّ لِلْإِنسَانِ أَيْضًا مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ بِالشَّرْعِ. It is also necessary for a man to believe in ash-shara', which is the legislation. وهو ما جاءت به الرسل عليهم الصلاة والسلام من أمر الله ونحيه وما يترتب عليهما من الجزاء ثوابا أو عقابا. And this is whatever the messengers, upon them be salat and salam, what they brought of the command of Allah and the prohibition of Allah. And likewise, whatever results from that of reward and punishment. فَيَقُومُ بِمَا يَلْزَمُهُ نَحْوَ الْأَمْرِ وَالنَّهِي وَيُؤْمِنُ بِمَا يَتَرَتَّبُ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنَ الْجَزَاءِ وَالْآثَارِ. So therefore, what does he do after believing in the legislations of Allah and that the messengers came with command and prohibition? What does he do? And that he will be rewarded and punished? Well, he does what is binding upon him, right? Meaning that he does the command and he keeps away from the prohibition, and he believes in what the consequences are of the reward, of the recompense and the effects in the hereafter, right? So what the Shaykh is mentioning here, that on the one hand we have al-qadr, which has all of those fruits and consequences and which is necessary to believe in. And then on the other hand, we also have the legislation. And from the legislation is to believe in the command and the prohibition and the reward and punishment resulting from doing that or not doing that, right? So the Shaykh then goes on to explain the wisdom behind why legislation of the law is necessary. Just like belief in al-qadr is necessary. And he explains it as follows. He says, وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّ الْإِنسَانَ مُرِيدٌ. Right? He says, this is because man is one who wishes, he has a desire. Right? So all of mankind, every man, no particular man, we're not speaking about a believer specifically, but all of mankind, he is created with a desire. He has an irada. And فَلَا بُدَّ لَهُ من فعل يدرك به ما يريد. And it is also necessary that this person has deeds, has an action by which he can reach or obtain that which he desires. وَيَدْفَعُ بِهِ مَا لَا يُرِيد. And by which he can repel that which he does not desire. Okay, the Shaykh is pointing out here just a reality about all of mankind, that all of mankind, and irrespective of whether you are a Muslim or a non-Muslim, a Jew, Christian, the whole of mankind, everyone has an irada. He has a wish. Generally, what is that wish? The wish is, I want to remove harm from myself and I want to attain benefit for myself. Right? This is something that all of mankind has with him and which basically drives him in his life to make the relevant choices in his life. Right? Because this is what drives everybody. There's an irada, there's the desire, and that desire is to attain the benefit and to repel the harm. Right? So this now is universal. Then he says, وَلَا بُدَّ لَهُ مِنْ ضَابِطٍ يَضْبِطُ تَصَرُّفُهُ لِأَلَّا يَقَعَ فِي مَا يَضُرُّهُ أَوْ يَفُوتَهُ مَا يَنْفَعُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَشْعُرُ. However, on top of this, a person must also have a principle, a dhabit, like some sort of rule or principle, which guides him, so that he does not fall into what harms him, or that he loses that which might benefit him without him realizing. Right? So, this shows the necessity of every person having something that guides and governs his desire and his action. Right? Because everybody has irada and fi'l. All of mankind has irada and fi'l. He has a wish and he has the deed by which he wants to obtain his wish. Right? And generally, for all of mankind, that is removal of harm and attainment of benefit. Right? But there has to be some guiding principle, there has to be some rule or some law which allows him to attain that objective. And he says, وَالشَّرْعُ الْإِلَهِ الَّذِي جَاءَتْ بِهِ الرُّسُلُ هُوَ الَّذِي يَضْبِطُ ذَلِكَ. Right. It is the divine legislation which the messengers have come with, that is what defines or dictates what the rule is, what the guiding principle is that should be followed. And وَيُصْدِرُ الْحُكْمَ بِهِ, and which brings forth the ruling in respect to it. وَيَكُونُ بِهِ التَّمْيِيزِ بَيْنَ النَّافِعِ وَالدَّارِ وَالصَّالِحِ وَالْفَاسِدِ, and by which that which is beneficial and harmful and righteous and corrupt can be distinguished. Because this law, لِأَنَّهُ مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ, this law is from Allah, Al-Alim, Al-Rahim, Al-Hakim, who is all-knowing and all-merciful and all-wise. Okay, so here what we see is that the Shaykh has explained that by necessity of a man being one who has a will, he has an irada, he has a desire, a wish, and he has deeds, then these things need to be regulated or have a principle by which the beneficial from them can be distinguished from the harmful from them. And the only thing that can do that is the law that Allah revealed upon the tongues of His messengers. Nothing else. I mean, there are other things, as the Shaykh will explain in what follows. Like, for example, we do have knowledge of what is right and wrong, beneficial and harmful to a certain degree, by way of experience, by way of reason, by way of innate, original, the intuition, the disposition. We can know things, that's true. But what defines all of that comprehensively and in detail, then that is the legislation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is explained further by what follows. The Shaykh then goes on to say, he says, وَالْعُقُولُ, the intellects, وإن كانت تدرك النافع والضار في الجملة لكن تفصيل ذلك والإحاطة به إحاطة تامة إنما يكون من جهة الشرع. Right? So we're not denying that reason, intellect, even though it can acquire knowledge of benefit and harm, generally speaking, the details of all of that and treating them comprehensively, this can only come by way of the legislation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلِهَذَا نَقُولُ, and for this reason we say, النَّفْعَ وَالدَّرْ, benefit and harm, what is beneficial and harmful, it can sometimes be known by way of fitrah, by way of a person's intuition or natural disposition. وَقَدْ يَكُونُ مَعْلُومًا بِالْأَقْلِ, it can also be known by way of reason. Right? So what is beneficial and harmful, we can also know by way of reason. وَقَدْ يَكُونُ مَعْلُومًا بِالتَّجَارُبِ, it can also be known by practical experience, by physical experience. We know that this is beneficial, this is harmful. Like you could eat plants, as people would eat plants, and then one person gets poisoned and dies, then we know this is poisonous. Right? We know this is harmful. So by experience we know things are harmful or beneficial. وَقَدْ يَكُونُ مَعْلُومًا بِالشَّرْعِ, and it can also be known by way of legislation, right? So basically, there are 4 ways by which we can know what is harmful and what is beneficial. It is, first of all, the intuition that we have been given. Everyone has been given the natural, original disposition, the fitrah. Secondly, by way of reason, the application of reason. Thirdly, by way of actual experience, practical experience. We come to know very quickly what is harmful, what is beneficial. And fourthly, by way of the revelation, by way of the law. Now, the Shaykh goes on to say that the role of legislation for Shara' يأتي مؤيدا لما شهدت به الفطرة والعقل والتجارب. The legislation of Allah comes in order to strengthen what the fitrah and aql and tajarub, meaning the fitrah, intuition, and reason and experience, what they have come to know, what they know. In other words, the law, the legislation comes to support and to strengthen what is already known and witnessed by way of these 3 other things. The intuition, the uncorrupted intuition, the fitrah, the reason, and practical experience. And these other things, these 3 things, the fitrah, the aql, and tajarub, they come and they bear a witness. They bear witness to the sharia, right? So how is this working? Let me give you an example. Let's take, for example, alcohol, right? Or drugs or intoxicants. Everybody knows by way of experience, by tajarub, by way of reason, and even by way of intuition, that if you take intoxicants, alcohol, you lose your mind, you are befogged of your mind, and by practical experience, we know that people who drink alcohol, they have liver damage, they have cancers, they have domestic violence. Many of the crimes which take place in society, about 50% of them are under the influence of alcohol. And so there's, domestic violence in the house, there are murders, there are things that take place. Husband kills his wife because he's angry, he's come back, his football team lost to the away team, and he's been drinking alcohol, he comes and he, beats his wife or whatever, right? So these are things that they know through experience that this is harmful. And then there's harm to the economy as well, right? That when you have a nation of drunkards who drink alcohol, then so much money is wasted on unnecessary medication, healthcare, hospital beds, social services for domestic violence. It brings into the society so many evils that are not necessary, that then destroy many other aspects of society, right? So this is known by experience. So when the Sharia comes, the law of Allah, when it comes and it prohibits alcohol and declares it to be from the work of shaitan, from the work of Iblis, and prohibits it, then the law is only strengthening and confirming what is known by experience and reason. And conversely, reason and experience, they bear a witness to the truth of what the law has brought, right? And so this is the nature of the law brought by the prophets and messengers. It is the truth. It commands all that is beneficial. It prohibits all that is harmful. And real life and reason bear witness to the truth of what the legislation has come with, right? So the qadr of Allah bears witness to the truth of the shara of Allah, right? What Allah decrees to happen. And so this we can apply to all things. We can apply it to usury, interest, how Allah has declared a war against interest, the usury, right? Because usury is the basis of the destruction of nations when they deal in interest. And that's what we see in the modern era with all of these kind of nations who whose economies run on interest, what happens is that give it 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 decades, then the people will be born into slavery. Right? So if your nation deals in interest, then after the passing of generations, your descendants will eventually wake up one day when they are absolute total slaves. And that's what's going to happen. It's already happened, but it's what's going to happen to these Western nations, because they're all in debt to the tune of trillions and trillions and trillions, because the way the economies work is that the government borrows from a private central bank the money which is created as debt, and then they are worked to death to pay that interest by way of taxes. And over time, over the passing of generations, the actual real physical wealth in that nation of property, land, minerals, resources is gradually taken control of by the ones who give the loans, until the whole country is literally taken and stripped. And, after some generations, nobody owns anything, and everybody born is therefore born as a slave. Right? And that's what they mean when they say today, you've heard this statement, you will own nothing and you will be happy. That's literally what they mean. You will own nothing. Right? Because all of the printing of this money, the trillions and trillions and trillions, you have to pay. That's being printed because you're going to pay for it. Right? And so when the amount of money that's printed and the debt that's created is more than the value of all of the assets in a country, that means you've just been turned into a slave, because nobody has property anymore. Right? It's all owned. It's been snatched by the creditors, the ones who, right? And so this is why usury in the Quran, Allah has declared a war from Allah for people who do not abandon, who let go of the usury. So that's usury, that's alcohol, then there's fornication, then there's many other things, which when you look at the Sharia of Islam, it has come with the truth. It has come with rectification. It has come to make societies prosper. And everything that we see in these societies bears witness to the justice and the truth of the legislation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only reason you hear all of these people, the only reason you have all this propaganda, inshallah, we'll come to an end. We'll continue this discussion or we'll finish this off in the next lesson. But the only reason, just to finish off on this point, the only reason why you have all of these, this propaganda against Islam and the Sharia is precisely because the people who benefit the most from these things which destroy society, which is usury, and which is alcohol, and which is intoxicants, and gambling, and fornication, and illicit relationships. There are people out there who make billions upon billions upon billions out of these vices, because they know that people have an irada which can be corrupted, and so they make billions, billions, and billions. So when Islam, the Sharia of Islam, when it comes and it puts an end to all of these evils, you will find that the greatest enemies and opponents to the call of the messengers are these rich and wealthy elite, right, who have something to lose if people abandon alcohol, abandon fornication, abandon illicit relationships, abandon gambling, abandon all these frivolities which and instead they live a meaningful life based upon worship of Allah, right? They stand to lose. And so therefore these are the types of people, and that's why in all the stories of the prophets in the Quran you will see that the mala is like the heads of the people of disbelief. The elites, the powerful rich and the elites of the people of disbelief, they are always the ones who stand against the messengers, reject their message, and then they lie to the people, they tell lies to the people in order to stop them from hearing the message of the prophets, right? As they did with Nuh, and with Hud and with Salih, and this is what they do. And so that's exactly what you see today in relation to the Quran, to the final message. You see all of this propaganda and lies against Islam, about women, about this, about that, about the barbaric Sharia. All of this is part and parcel of that propaganda to stop people from accepting the truth, and that in which true rectification lies for them. But anyhow, there's a very interesting treatment here by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, which we'll finish with, which is basically that the Sharia comes to support and strengthen what is known by fitrah and reason and by practical experience. And fitrah, reason and practical experience, they bear witness and testify to the correctness of what the Sharia has brought. And okay, we can finish on that note, inshallah, and there's a point we'll take up. And in fact, let's just finish this point then for the sake of completion. One final point the Shaykh finishes with, which is to say, okay, this raises the question, which is, how do we know whether something is good or evil? Can it be known by reason before revelation, or can it only be known after revelation has come? Right, this is a question that arises, right? And this is a very important question because there are so many other aspects of belief to do with Al-Qadr. They follow on from this. But let me just to give you an example what this means. Stealing, for example. Is stealing wrong? Do we know that stealing is wrong by reason? Or do we say stealing is only wrong after the revelation says it's wrong? Do you understand? Right, what the issue is here is, what determines what is evil, what is wrong? Can that be known by reason before revelation? Or is it the case that something only becomes wrong after revelation? Do you understand? So what the meaning is here, for example, if I steal from someone, right, I can say, well, you can say, well, hang on, that stealing is not wrong because the revelation hasn't come yet to say that it's wrong. And then the revelation comes and says stealing is wrong. Only now can it be said to be wrong. Right? So the issue here is, did stealing become wrong only after revelation came? Or is it the case that stealing is still wrong as recognized by the reason before revelation? Do you understand? Right? And so what is correct is, this is like an issue, what is correct is that basically the way we know things are right and wrong, sometimes it can be known by the intellect, sometimes it can be known by the revelation only, sometimes it can be known by them both. It can be known by them both. And however, the detailed knowledge and comprehensive knowledge of everything that is right and wrong, beneficial, harmful, that is only comprised in the Sharia, in the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So basically, we are not denying that reason can figure out that something is good or bad, right? And that's why in the legislations of many of the non-Muslims, obviously there are many things which are obviously correct, right? Murder is prohibited, stealing is prohibited, these things are known by way of reason. We can't say, well, the only way something becomes good or bad is after the revelation comes and says it's bad. No. Right? Adultery is evil because reason knows it to be evil before before any revelation comes. And then revelation comes and describes it as evil. Right? And declares it to be unlawful. Right? So it's known to be so by reason and by revelation. Okay, so anyhow, this is a topic that the Shaykh mentioned very briefly. At-tahseen wa taqbih is what it's called in Arabic. And there are many very important issues of belief connected to that, but we're not going to focus on that. The Shaykh just mentioned it here. And with that, we'll bring our lesson to a close. So just to recap, basically, the importance of believing in al-qadr and the importance of believing in the legislation, right? Legislation is a necessity for mankind. There has to be legislation, right? By which the irada and the fi'l of mankind is put right, right? And likewise, al-qadr, belief in al-qadr, is a necessity as well. And from it come all of those fruits. Tawakkul upon Allah, being humble and being tranquil and not being arrogant, not being amazed with oneself, and taking the ways and means, and all of these. And so that's why there is nothing but tremendous goodness in believing in al-qadr and acting by the shara, acting by the legislation. And when the people do that, honestly, truthfully, sincerely, then this is when the affairs of mankind, they become rectified, and they become, they are rectified. So with that, we'll conclude our lesson there for today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.